All right, wouldn't it be awesome to build agents that just get you, that speak your language and understand all of the obscure and arcane terms that you use on a day-to-day basis? Well, today we're going to talk about how to do just that in this concept of semantic indexing in M365 Copilot and Copilot Studio. Now, I am old enough to remember this moment in history. Perhaps you are as well.
It depends upon what the meaning of the word is.
Now, while this was a somewhat comical moment back in the late 1990s, President Clinton described semantic indexing and semantic consistency absolutely perfectly last century, before all of this AI stuff even existed. So let's get into it and talk about why this is so important. All right, what we're going to cover off is that every organization speaks its own language. We'll then talk about how semantic indexing turbocharges your agents. We'll also talk about how it can turbocharge chaos at scale if you get it wrong. And of course, we'll talk about how to get it right. All right. Every organization under the sun is some flavor of alphabet soup. We all joke and have a laugh about it, but the reality is that each organization has its own language, a combination of terms, of acronyms, of things that we use on a day-to-day basis. And it forces cohesiveness. It brings us together. It's one of our shared things as an organization. So there's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's just the way we work as groups. And imagine being able to have agents that just understand the language that you use in your organization. Now, this is pretty much the selling point for tools like M365 Copilot and Copilot Studio, because they are grounded in your business data. They just understand you, and so they can go and start to bring the power of Agentic AI to your organization. They don't just have the knowledge of the general web data that they were trained on, but your organization's specific data. This makes them incredibly powerful. However, there's a problem. Let's look at a very common and yet very simple inconsistency in many organizations. What does the term customer mean? For example, if we're talking to the sales department, customer could mean anyone who's in our pipeline, people that we're just interacting with, meeting with, creating opportunities for. In customer service, customer could mean someone who is actively contacting us for help. And of course, in finance, customer is only going to mean anyone transacting cash with us. Otherwise, they don't exist. We don't care about them. Now, where does this start to become a problem? Well, in the old days, with our paper-based systems, this wasn't such a big deal. Paper-based systems are incredibly flexible, and of course we had lots of humans in the mix reading between the lines, and so any conflict between what a customer means to finance versus what it means to sales wasn't such a big deal. Now, this started to become a problem as we moved into systems of record. These are the systems that you and I work on today in business applications, Dynamics 365, Power Platform, Dataverse, stuff like that. Now, these started out being fairly siloed, but if you have ever worked on an ERP and CRM integration project, then you start to understand this concept of semantic consistency, because when you are talking ERP versus CRM, terms like customer start to take on very different meanings. And when we don't have that alignment, it starts to cause problems. Now, with Agentic AI, we are moving towards this era of hyperconnected systems of intelligence. We've got LLMs, agents in the center, and they've got access to all the data. In M365 Copilot, the Graph API has access to everything, whether it's in Teams or SharePoint or OneDrive. We can extend that with Copilot Studio to things like Dataverse and ServiceNow and Salesforce, and all these other systems of record can now be connected to Agentic AI to start doing things. And so this can start to cause issues, because if we do not have consistent definition of the terms, when we prompt our agent, we start to get chaos at scale. I prompt my agent and I ask it to do something related to a customer. But customer could mean multiple different things. Again, sales, service, and finance all have different definitions of this. And if we haven't defined this consistently across the organization and let the agent know what that means, then the agent doesn't know what we want. And it's going to attempt to answer our question. It's going to guess. But again, this is where fabrications start to come into the mix, because if I'm asking from a sales point of view and the agent is referencing the finance definition of customer, this is where we start to get inconsistencies, fabrications, and other undesirable outcomes with our AI agents. All right, so how do we fix this? Well, this is the main point. Before you ever build the agents, before you bring the technology in, it is critical that you align on the key terms in your organization. What does customer mean? What does account mean? What does finance mean? All these types of things. We need to ensure that we are aligned in our business, that semantic alignment. That way, once we start training our agents on our specific business language, they don't have the confusion, which means we get better agentic results once we turn on the agents. All right, that's it from me. Go do something awesome on the Power Platform today, and I'll talk to you soon.